The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development, with a magazine and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives. At The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.com.
Can we all please stand up and give these courageous, amazing people a big round of applause. Thank you.
Sorry, can you all just stay standing for me? And can you all just move like 1 or 2 rows forward, just so we can be a little bit closer together, please? Will that be alright? And on the side, can you just move in a little bit this way, so that we don't have to shout that way. Hello at the back, welcome, do come in, thank you. I appreciate you doing this. If you could just, let's get you all come a little bit further forward, that's fantastic. If you could do it quietly and really tense as well, that would make things a lot easier. That's brilliant. Thank you. Right, now we're all sitting. Just 1 moment. This is what I want you to do. Lady on the end there, hello. Can I just ask you to give me a little gentle clap, and we're going to go across the room with a gentle clap. Just a gentle clap all the way across. Gentle clap, gentle. Can we have a slightly louder clap? Slightly louder, slightly louder. Can we have a clap and a cheer? Come on, let's clap and cheer. Clap and a cheer. All right. When I asked you to clap gently, it felt awkward, didn't it? When we all started clapping and cheering, it felt like we were part of something, didn't it? Right, that's how we got to be with mental health. At first it feels awkward, but by the end it just feels natural, and we all realise we're part of it, yeah? So give yourselves a round of applause, and please welcome Claude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming here today. Thank you so much to my panellists. They're all here, no one's being paid, and they're here because I've had conversations with all of them. Because in mental health, literally, conversations change lives. And that's what we want to do. We just want to help people have the conversations that improve their lives or just express what they're feeling. Because it's horrible when you're kind of all caught up and you're not able to express what you're feeling. So, I met John Ryan last year when I spent 3 years campaigning to become a mental health first aider at work, and John turned up, and then HR came to the office a few weeks later, and I just said, we need to do something, and they agreed to make me a mental health first aider, which I think they're now regretting because I'm spending their money and running campaigns all the time and have posters up, and we're finally having conversations about mental health, and we're having fun time at work, and it's just allowing people to tell their stories. So people kind of look and go, wow, they've made you a mental health first aider, and we never thought that would happen. And so other people are now asking to become mental health first aiders as well, and we're having a wider range of people, and people then start to tell you individually their stories, and they tell you individually about their stresses, and it just makes life a little bit better. So that's how John Ryan's come here. And then Johnny, I went to a talk he gave with his father at a festival called Mental Wealth, which happens at City Lit once a year. And he gave an amazing talk, and I thought, I really want to talk to him, but I was too scared to go up and have the conversation. So I ended up emailing him twice, and on the second email he went, yeah, I'll come to your panel discussion. And then Jeff, I met because I sent a really super cheeky email to someone, and I said, look, you're running a conference and I really want to come, but I can't afford to come. And I told this story, which is a true story about what happened to a lad I knew, and he never expressed what was going on. And at the end of the story, which is a really sad story, he took his own life. And we all in the department, because there were about 12 of us in the department, were really hit hard, but nobody gave us any support, nobody talked about it. And Jeff, at the end of this conference that they gave me a free ticket to, said, what are we going to do about mental health? He asked everyone in the audience, and I thought, I'm going to try and make a difference this year. So I badgered poor Jeff, and he's agreed to come here too. And that's why everyone's here today.
So can you see that basically Claude just goes around getting men to do stuff for free? Do you see? Do you see what happens when you ask a question? 3 men at a time. Thank you. She just asks. So if you want to know something, or if you want something, just ask. But when you have a mental health issue, you can't ask. So sometimes we have to be willing to make you feel comfortable enough to ask the question. Does that make sense? So all we've done for Claude is allowed her to ask us to give up our time for free on a Friday afternoon, and we've done it. So if you ask, sometimes things will happen. Welcome, please do come on. Come on in.
Perfect. So, if each of you would maybe like to introduce yourselves and talk a bit more about what you guys are doing. And then my first big question for you all is, how do we get people to begin the conversation about mental health?
So my name is Johnny, and I am from North London. I was diagnosed with something called schizoaffective disorder when I was 20, so 10 years ago. It's like a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar. Really difficult time growing up and having to drop out of university, having to get my mental health back on track. It took a long time. But when I finally started talking in my mid-20s, that's when everything changed. And yeah, only sort of got better from there. But obviously, it's still an ongoing battle, and I have to keep talking. But that's the difference now, is because I do have relapses, and when I have relapses, I do talk. That's the thing. I do talk, I'm honest, I ask for help. I talk to my family now, I talk to my friends. I never thought I'd ever say that, back in the beginning, but I talk, and I'm honest, and I'm open, and that, for me, is the biggest difference. I still struggle, yeah, but because I talk, I get better quicker, that's the thing. So, sorry, what was the question?
No, I just said, would you like to introduce yourself? And then I'll throw the question, how do we begin to have a great conversation about mental health?
Okay, so shall I pass on, or shall I?
I don't mind.
I'll pass on, and I'll, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. Johnny's been quite humble. Did any of you come across the man on the bridge? The whole thing about a guy one day sitting on a bridge, and then some guy walks over the bridge and says, "What you doing?" And that guy who asked him, "What you doing?" is a guy by the name of Neil Laban, and he saved an individual's life. Well, that's Johnny. That's the guy who was on the bridge. Yeah. Anyway, I've got to know Johnny so well over the last couple of years. Look, just a bit about me. I spent 26 years working in a very big organization called Unilever. I was the global head of HR for Unilever, all our marketing, communications, sustainability around the world, and spent 25 years traveling the world, engaging with individuals, trying to create an organization that was more purpose-led. 2008, while I'm doing this big global job, I wake up one night with a panic attack. Never ever experienced a panic attack in all my life. I think it's a heart attack. I remember turning to my wife saying, "I think I'm about to have a heart attack," in bed at midnight. I remember her rolling over and saying, "Have it," after being married to me for 20 years. Anyway, she didn't say have it. Cut a long story short, I get up, I take some deep breaths, the levels of anxiety begin to subside, I get back into bed, I can't go back to sleep. I wake up, the next morning my wife says, "You've got to go and see a doctor." I go and see a doctor, and I get diagnosed back in 2008 with anxiety-fueled depression. And I can tell you, up until 2008, my understanding of the word depression, it's raining on a Saturday morning when I'd want to go for a ride on my bike, and I used to say, "Oh, I'm depressed because it's raining." That was my understanding of the word depression up until I get diagnosed with anxiety-fueled depression. It takes me 3 months to get better. I get myself better over a period of 3 months. I have dark moments. I have moments like Johnny had when he was sitting on a bridge or standing on a bridge. But the only thing that keeps me alive during those 3 months had been my ability to talk about my illness. So when I was diagnosed, I left the doctor's rooms and I decided that I would tell people what was wrong with me. So I wouldn't tell them that I've got glandular fever and I can't be at work. I wouldn't tell them that I've got bilharzia because I live in South Africa and I swam in some dam and now I've got bilharzia and I can't come to work for 3 months. I would tell people that I am suffering from anxiety-fueled depression. The only reason that saved my life was because in telling people, what I got in return was the most unbelievable outpouring of love. And you know, it was only love and knowing how much I was loved that kept me alive. In my darkest moments, knowing that I was loved by so many people is what kept me alive. And I suppose that sense of love kept me going. I don't know what would have happened to me had I not experienced that love, had I not been open about my illness, had I not been able to tell people what was wrong with me. I get myself better. 2012, one of my best friends dies by suicide, takes his own life. That night I lie in bed and I think to myself, stigma has just killed my friend. Because had he been suffering from any physical illness, he would have asked for help. But because he was suffering from a mental illness, he didn't think he could ask for help. And instead, he took his own life. And he left a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And I lay there and I thought, that's not fair. We live in the 21st century. Claudine asked me to come here today. I didn't arrive in a horse and cart. It didn't take me 3 days to get here. I got on a train, and we're in the 21st century, and we still can't talk about our mental health. We still can't talk about our mental health. We feel embarrassed. And sometimes that can lead to a tragic consequence. And that's what happened to me. I lost a very, very good friend. And that night was the night that I then decided to go out into the world and try and create workplaces all over the world where people feel that they can put their hand up and just ask for help if they're suffering from a mental ill health condition. Just ask for help. I just want everybody, everywhere in the world, to feel they genuinely have that choice. And you know why? Because we're all mental. And we're all physical. Yet we don't like to talk about being mental. Yet it's such an important part of who we are. And so if we can create workplaces all over the world where people feel that they can talk about their mental health like they can talk about their physical health, we will save lives. And that's the only thing that keeps me going today. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and why I'm here.
Wow. Hello. So my name's John Ryan. I'm a stand-up comedian. I do comedy clubs all around the world. I worked in community care for 10 years, so I worked a lot with people who are going through struggles. I have no lived experience myself of any mental health issue. I have never had anxiety or depression or anything yet. But I don't know what the future's got in store for me. So what I'm trying to do is help me by helping other people. It's great, Jeff's saying about he wants people to be able to ask for help, but part of the problem is that the people you're asking to help you don't want to listen. And what we need to do is challenge the people who are listening. And the way that we do that is just by saying, and I've always been the sort of person who says, well, I like your jumper, mate. I will say to you, I like your jumper. I like your hair. You know, you've got a really smiley face. I say this like a child all the time. But the problem is, as most people get older, they think that being a grown-up is about not saying, I really like your company, or I'm enjoying the day. I was always weird with my mates. I would say, let's go and get a coffee. And they're like, who goes and gets coffee? Let's go and get some beer. What's wrong with going to get a coffee? I will always say the thing that people think, but don't actually ask. And the problem we have, especially as men, is that we always carry on doing what we've always done. And all we're doing is repeating the mistake. Don't matter if you're black man, white man, grey man, yellow man, we're all the same. And we need to challenge this, so we need to stop it. The problem with stigma is that no one ever thinks, why is this acceptable? Why is it acceptable to make jokes about people with ginger hair? How does it feel if you've got ginger hair, right? I'm a ginger, my fellow ginger, right? And we're indoors, we can't get burnt in here, so we're happy. But how many times do you get people taking the mick out of the colour of your hair? It's boring, isn't it? But it doesn't affect us getting work, getting training, getting promotion, having a nice life. But if you've got anxiety or depression, it'll actually affect your ability to keep a job, get training, get promotion, and how you're treated. Most people would rather say they have diarrhea than depression. And yet, if you have diarrhea, it's not as debilitating as depression, because in both of those situations, you can't wash, you can't clean, you can't eat, you can't take care of yourself. One gets sympathy and one doesn't. If you break your leg at 15 and again at 50, no one associates the two. If you have a breakdown at 15 and again at 50, they'll say, flipping out, she's lost the plot again. We need to think about the barriers that we're putting up. And I find that because I do comedy, I can say outrageous things, I can be outrageous, and people go, well, he's a comedian. But you know what, man? You're just as powerful as I am in saying to people, come on, let's all start being nice to each other. Let's have a little look around and just give each other a little wave. Let's try that. Come on, who's going to do it? But you see, me saying something stupid, we're all doing it, and it makes us feel good, doesn't it? You can do that. Don't be on the tube train. It really upsets people. But it's all about every one of us has got the power to change, you know, and I'm just trying to use my particular technique to make a difference in much the same way that these two guys have. Thank you.
If you're interested in speaking, exhibiting, or getting involved in the largest personal development expos in the world, contact us today at www.thebestyouexpo.com or send us an email to info@thebestyou.co.
Can I just say, I love ginger hair. I'm not just saying that. There's something about ginger hair. And anyway, sorry.
Perfect. So, first kind of question that I wanted to throw out was, what do we look for in a conversation about mental health?
Shall I start? So, shall I stand? Shall I stand? All right, okay, I'll stand. So I think, in terms of the person saying or the person receiving it?
Both, I think. I think particularly as the listener. So, you know, someone says to you, you know, I'll give an example. My friend had a really nice evening with a female friend of his, not like that, but just a female friend. I'm just saying. And just as she was walking away, she said to him, some days I just feel like I should jump in front of the train.
Yeah.
And it's like, all evening, it's been perfectly simple, but she hadn't shared that one thing, and just as she's leaving, that's the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
That's what made me want to ask that question of you guys.
Yeah, and I've experienced that a number of times myself, being that person that says it, and being the listener as well. And I think for me, it's about holding that space, you know, when someone says something like that. Because I've been in situations like that where I said things to friends. I was at a restaurant once, actually in a restaurant, and I said something like that to my friends, and my friends just went silent. And one of them said, let's get the bill. And I was like, shit, like, this hasn't gone well. I think it's about holding the space, and just really kind of, the non-judgment is really key. So when someone says something like that, it's okay, you know, not making a big deal out of it, for me again, not making a big deal, just saying, okay, this is how you feel, let's talk about it, you know, let's maybe carry on the conversation, come back to mine, not like that, obviously, or let's go to a coffee shop. People are frightened, people are so scared, you know, particularly when it comes to something like suicide, and someone kind of showing some intent to end their life, people just want to run away from it, but the best thing you can do is actually to dive in with that person and, you know, get that person to share more, you know, because the person just wants to be heard, they want to be heard, and they don't want to be dismissed. Too often, I find, not just me, but other people within health services find that they're dismissed, you know, and I'm not trying to criticise the health service, but too often we find GPs or psychiatrists even are quick to kind of dismiss and say, well, this is how it is, take your medication, there you go, end of. What we need to do is we need to, hold that space, let that person be, allow that person to talk and express and not judge. That's the key, is not judge. As you heard, I was sitting on a bridge, and, you know, for me, when this stranger came along, the key thing that he did was he listened with this kind of, this patience, this calmness, this kind of, this empathy, and this non-judgment. Because that's what you're so worried about, how you're going to be judged and what someone is going to think of you. But if you can just hold the space for someone and just let them be and let them know that's okay. It's human. It's just human to have those thoughts, those feelings. Suicidal thoughts are much more common than we all think. We don't talk about them. They're the elephant in the room, but, you know, they are so much more common than we think. So let that person be and just treat them as a human being.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Cool. Jeff, I might throw a different question to you, unless you'd like to answer the same question about how you go about having a conversation around mental health.
No, I think Johnny's covered the point.
Great. Do you think when we're trying to get the message across about mental health, facts or storytelling work best?
Look, I think my experience is the most powerful way in which you can engage in this particular subject is by telling a story. So I think storytelling is the most powerful form of communication. I mean, we could have come here today and had 10 slides and facts and figures. We all know the facts and figures. But telling stories and hearing stories, which are coming from a real place of authenticity, where people in hearing that story, they relate to that story. And in relating to that story, they might feel inspired that they now want to go and do something about it. You know, I often say that you know, in my work that I did in Unilever in trying to break the stigma around mental ill health, the most powerful lever in breaking that stigma was not training, although training was very, very, very important. It wasn't all the campaigning that we did, where we had lovely posters on the back of walls and toilet doors and telling people where they could go and get help. And those campaigns were fantastic. But the most powerful lever in breaking the story was when people told their stories. And when some of those stories were told by people that you would never ever have thought might have suffered from a mental ill health condition. Influential people in the organization, senior people in the organization. And part of my challenge to organizations today is there are too many junior people telling their stories. Don't tell me that the CEO has never suffered from a mental ill health condition, or hasn't got a brother or a father or a mother or a sister and has got a story to tell. Don't tell me that that doesn't exist. And we need more and more of those leaders, more of those influential people in the world beginning to tell their stories. And I'll tell you what's so powerful about telling a story. Every story that we tell, every single story that we tell, do you know what it's like? It's like sending a lifeboat out into the ocean, a lifeboat. And you know what? The millions and millions of people around the world who are suffering in silence, and there could be some of you sitting in this room today, suffering in silence. You know, when they hear that story, they cling on to that lifeboat. They just cling on. And you know what they realize? They realize they might just be normal. They might just be normal. Because somebody else has told the story. And that feels like me. And guess what? That person's okay, so maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm just normal. And that's the power of telling stories.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You don't have to cap off. Only John. Just cap for John because he loves to be capped for. But for me, you don't have to cap after every session.
Okay, John.
Me, good. I better get hard on. I better get tough on. Come on, clap. Come on,
Okay.
I like Jeffs as well. Go on.
John, do you think political correctness makes it harder to have the conversation about
mental health? Let me tell you about political correctness.
Okay.
We wouldn't need political correctness if people had manners. You understand? The reason that they brought this thing in was because some people, if you don't tell them what they can't say, they will say anything. Right? It doesn't matter to me where someone is from or who they are, what they've done in their life. It's not my business. But what happens is everyone uses political correctness to stop people being rude, don't they? To me, it seems like everyone. It's like freedom of speech. You can have freedom of speech, but you've got to realise you can't. Certain things you can't talk about, you can't say. Mental health shouldn't be something that you should be able to talk about. The problem we have, especially as men, is that, and this goes back to your question, we don't know how to talk. This is a conversation between two men, right? Are you okay? Yeah. See that? We're best mates now. That's two men. You're right, yeah. The guy's on fire. He's got flames coming off him. And I'm like, well, he says he's all right, isn't he? He says he's all right. I'm sorry if this sounds sexist or misogynist. This is a conversation between two women. You all right? No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Come on, let's go and have a drink and talk about it. And that's the difference. I've got 2 daughters, I've got 3 sons. I see this in action all the time. My son, 15, playing FIFA. Okay, he's playing FIFA. He missed the goal. And I heard his mate go to him, you're rubbish, you batty boy. And then there was silence. Then I could hear mumbling. Then my son and his friend came into the kitchen where I was sitting. And my son said, Gavin wants to say something to you, Dad. I went, what's that? Gavin said, I'm really sorry, I used a hate word in your front room. And I said, what was the hate word? He said, well, I said, batty boy. I said, okay, why is that a hate word? He goes, well, because I've used it as an insult. And I said, well, what's wrong with that? He goes, well, I shouldn't be using that as a term to insult. Now, that boy is 15, and my 15-year-old son knew to pull him up on it. But most guys, and most people, will just let it slide. Do you understand? That's why you have to have political correctness. These lovely sisters here can tell you stories about the 60s, the 70s, and the way that black people were treated. And we now go, it's unacceptable. And if anyone thinks it's not acceptable, you need to go and have a look at yourselves, right? There was a time when you could make jokes about gay people, and it's unacceptable. At the moment, the only people you can make jokes about and get away with it are people with a mental health problem and gingers. It's about political correctness. It's not about rules and regulations. It's about telling people who ain't got the decency to hold their mouths, to hold their mouths. Do you understand? And it's this whole thing about, it shouldn't be an insult. You should never need to tell someone, you know, I'm sorry, that's not right for you to say that. You should know it is not right to say that. At the moment, we've got all this Brexit stuff going on. We've got all these people from Eastern Europe who've come here to work, who are away from home, who are away from their families, who are isolated, and who have got all the indicators that could lead them to be more likely to develop a mental health problem than people who live here. And now we tell them we don't want you. What is that doing to their mental health? How many people from the Caribbean suffered from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s mentally for all the abuse they got? Same with the Irish, same with the Jews, same with gay people. But we don't think about that, and that's why political correctness came in. You shouldn't need political correctness. You should just go and slap people around the face when they say something that upsets you. Go on, Jeff. Jeff, sorry. Go on.
So I just want to build on that. I think we need to very, very carefully think about the narrative around mental health. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Mental health is the most damaged brand I have ever come across. It's the most damaged brand. When I use the word mental health, people immediately go to illness. They go to depression, they go to psychosis, they go to schizophrenia. When I use the word physical health, people don't immediately go to glandular fever, diabetes, bilharzia. If I were to walk into a Nike store or an Adidas store, what would I see all over the walls? I would see what I would call chiseled whippets. You want to stand up? Come on, you're a chiseled whippet. Stand up, show us what a chiseled. There's a chiseled whippet compared to me. All right? So when I go into an Adidas store, when I go into a Nike store, I see images of chiseled whippets. Right? And I look at myself and I think, shit, I'm overweight. But I feel inspired by that chiseled whippet and I go and buy a pair of running shoes. When it comes to mental health, what are the images you see? Black and white photographs, Johnny with his hand in his head, some mental asylum with a white coat on. There's nothing inspirational. There's nothing aspirational about me looking after my mental health. And you know what? Who's the Usain Bolt of mental health? Who's the Usain Bolt? Who are those heroes out there? There are heroes. Winston Churchill, Marie Curie, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, these are unbelievable human beings. And so I think we need to create a narrative, a brand around mental health that is more aspirational, it's more inspirational. It's about maintaining my mental health so that I can function better. Yes, of course there are people who are ill, and let's talk about mental ill health when we talk about that. Yes, there are people who are struggling out there. But how do we make heroes out of people who suffered from mental ill health? Somebody once asked me, they said, why would you ever recruit somebody? Why would you ever recruit somebody who has suffered from a mental ill health condition? And you know what my answer to that was? I'll tell you why I'll recruit somebody who has suffered. That person is probably a better listener. That person is probably a more caring individual. That person has undergone or overcome a significant challenge in their life. That person is probably hugely compassionate. That person is in tune with mental ill health symptoms, both for himself and the people that he leads. You know what? That person, man or woman, is probably a better human being. And you know what? I want human beings running organizations today, not narcissists and bullies that we see in the world today. And so there's something positive about mental health. There's something positive about having had an experience and coming through that. And we've got to shift the narrative, and we've got to create a more positive and inspiring narrative so that we don't have to be politically correct about this subject and this brand called mental health.
Having promoted more than 600 speakers and more than 65,000 people attend my seminars and courses and workshops and expos, having read so many books and attended so many courses, I really realized that the basics of personal, professional growth is based on the power of the question. Asking yourself empowering questions. Read my new book, The Question, Find Your True Purpose. It's based on my work, 30 years of entrepreneurship, all the experiences that I have, my manifesto, and what's really important. So for more information, go to www.thequestion.co.
So, would each of you maybe like to tell the audience what you're doing at the moment around the subject of mental health, and like the plans and things you've got for the coming months? And then maybe we could give people like something to take away as a result of our whole kind of discussion today. Is that cool?
So my big focus is around young people and mental health. We know that 3/4 of all mental health issues begin in adolescence, so it doesn't make sense why we don't do more in schools, in colleges. You know, what really gets me in the UK, I'm getting angry now. In the UK, well not just the UK, but all around the world, you know, when you were at school, I bet you did like physical education, PE, sport. Did everyone do PE, sport, physical activity at school? Who learned about mental health when they were at school? Who learned about their brain? That doesn't make sense when you know that 3/4 of all mental health issues begin in adolescence. We know that suicide is the biggest killer in this country of both women and men under 35, and yet we don't address it. In schools, colleges, universities, graduates, it just does not make sense. So what we're doing, we've just set up a brand new charity, which is called Beyond Shame, Beyond Stigma, which is all about getting help and support and education into schools, colleges, universities, not just to young people, but to teachers and to their families. Too often when we go into schools, we see teachers that are really overwhelmed with stress, not just themselves, but the stress of, you know, what's going on with their pupils, and families as well. I know from my family and other families, they don't get the help and support they need when someone is struggling with a mental health issue. When someone is struggling with a mental health issue, it doesn't just affect the person, it affects everyone around them, and families just don't get the help they need. So that's what we're trying to do. In the UK, the average time between your first symptoms of a mental illness and your diagnosis and your treatment is 10 years. It's 10 years in between the two, and that is not good enough. And the problem we have in this country is there's been so many cuts, particularly to young people's mental health services. I'm sick of going into schools and then saying, well, we have to get rid of our counsellor. The first thing they get rid of is the mental health support, and it just does not make sense, because you never get rid of the physical nurse, the school nurse. You know, you never get rid of them. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get stuff into schools, into colleges, universities, and trying to make a difference, because I'm really concerned about the next generation, particularly with like the technology and social media and all the pressure that young people are under. We know that more young people than ever before are struggling with their mental health, but we're not doing enough. And I'm really worried about the next generation. So that's what I'm trying to focus on is young people, essentially.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I have a company, we're called Happy to Help You, and we use comedy and the arts to raise awareness of mental well-being, mental health, men's health, women's health. What we do is we use actors, dancers, poets, comedians, just to try and get people talking. So at the moment I have a project on a university in London with med students. If you think about it, med students to become doctors have to have 4 A stars at A-level. It's a lot of pressure that they're under. They do 7 years, very intense. But we also have a project with young kids in inner city, 15, 16-year-olds, who are suffering just the same amount of problems. And all we try and do is just get them talking, get them to start thinking about what is the stigma, why is it an issue. If someone has had an episode and they have an episode again, well, that's just their life's journey, it's just their life's path. If you catch a cold, you can get over it. If you suffer from anxiety, depression, you can get over it. It may come back, you may have good times, you may have bad times. When you were talking about where our heroes, J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter during the psychotic episode. If she was mentally sound and sane, had never had any issues, could she have written a book like that? If I wrote a book, it would be once upon a time a man was minding his own business, and then his wife told him, go and load up the dishwasher, and the kids need to take to school, the end. Who wants to read that? Robbie Williams wrote Angels when he was suffering from a bipolar episode. Well, all these creative people have links to mental unwellness. Instead of seeing it as not normal, we should see it as just part of their journey. The only thing that is normal in life is a setting on the washing machine. And even when I put it on normal, I can still make everything pink or blue or grey. All I'm trying to do is get people to realise, you know what, there's nothing wrong with saying hello to people. We live in London, it's the most diverse, multicultural city on the planet. If you have never had rice and peas, bacon and cabbage with some kuftela and a kebab and some fufu, then you ain't lived. Everything in the world is here. And one thing you need to learn is that no matter where you are from, we all want the same things. We all want to be loved, we all want to be fed, clothed, needed, supported. And we all want to just be able to just be. And I think the problem we have with the next generation, with the kids, like you're saying, is now they've got all this social media nonsense. They're not only trying to live up to their parents' expectation, but their friends' expectations. All they're doing now is living in the virtual world, which isn't even real. Sorry, Francis, right? I know he works in that, but it's not real. They're all trying to look good in cyberspace. It's not real. If you enjoy the moment, how many times you've been out and you see one person on their phone, the other person on their phone, they're not even... Sometimes I'm at home watching a film, my daughter goes on her phone, I'll press pause and say, send your message and turn your phone off. Be in the moment. She'll go, oh, I've just sent her the message. You're such a hashtag bully. Turn it off. She'll turn it off. I'll press play. Then my son, he's on his phone sending a message. I'll go, what are you doing? I'm just sending a message. Who are you sending a message to? Her. They're in the same room. What are you messaging her about? The film. Why don't you wait till afterwards? You understand? Nobody lives in the moment. And that's all we try to do with our little company. Happy to help you. We try to get people to just enjoy the moment, enjoy this moment in time. Say hello to a stranger on the way out, and then say hello to a stranger on the train, and say hello to your neighbours. You know what? We're all connected. We're all connected. We can either help each other or we can hinder each other. You know. Thank you.
Cool, well done, Paul. Very good, very good. And I love what you say about learning to just be, learning to be confident in who you are. I did a session for a bunch of men the other day around this particular subject, and one of the fathers in the room put their hand up and he said, what must I do as a father to try and protect my daughter's mental health? And there was an expert in the room who got up and said, and he was saying, you know, because all this social media stuff, and how do I control all of that? And this expert got up and said, you're never going to control that. You're never going to control their exposure to social media. You're never going to be able to take their telephone away from them. I mean, that's just part of who they are, and it's part of life today. But you know what you can do as a father? What you can do is you can ensure that you're bringing that child up so that they think that they are the best thing in the world. Doesn't matter what they look like, what they smell like, what color their skin is, they are the best thing in the world. So they don't need to look on social media and see somebody better than them and want to be like that, because they're so powerfully confident about who they are. And you know what's so sad today in parenting is we don't parent anymore because we're all on our machine. We're never talking to our children. We're never engaging with our children. We're never making them feel that they are the best thing in the world. So yeah, I think that point, Paul, about just being confident and proud about who you are, not who you aspire to be. So what do I do? And what I've spent, since leaving Unilever, I've spent the last 5 years living a life. I think it was Mark Twain who said, the two most important days in your life, the day you were born and the day you find out why. Not the day you die, the day you were born and the day you find out why. And I'm so clear on why I was born. I'm just trying to create workplaces all over the world where people in those workplaces feel that they genuinely have the choice to put their hand up and to just ask for some help if they are suffering from a mental ill health condition. And the reason I'm so passionate about that is because I know that if my friend felt he genuinely had that choice, he might still be with us today. And so I want to create workplaces all over the world where people feel that they genuinely have that choice. And the way I do that is I go in and I catalyze that conversation in the C-suite with leadership teams. And I'm so lucky because I've got 25 years of senior HR corporate experience. So I can look that CEO in the eye and ask them, what are you doing to try and create this kind of environment where people feel they genuinely have the choice to just ask for some help? The last thing that you asked us, Claudine, was to just say, what could you do after today? What could you do? What is it that, what one or two things could you do? I'd ask you to just think about two things for me. The first that I'd love you to do, the first thing, is just go and start a conversation about this issue. Just go and start a conversation. Go and have a conversation at home, go and have a conversation at work, but just have a conversation about mental health. Because I honestly believe that if we can have the conversation, anything becomes possible. You know, somebody once upon a time, I think it was Kennedy, he started a conversation about putting a man on the moon and bringing them back safely. Guess what? It happened. But if we can't have the conversation, nothing is possible. So let's just, all of us, today, tomorrow, we can start this conversation. And finally, when you're ready, join us on our crusade of telling your story. You've all got a story. Every one of us has got a story. Now, don't rush off and tell that story if you don't feel comfortable and ready to. Don't tell a story about somebody else if you haven't asked them permission to tell that story. But please, when you are ready, get the support, the help, the coaching. But when you're ready, please join us in telling your story. Every story we tell is like sending a lifeboat out into the ocean. And people who are suffering in silence cling on, and they know they are normal. And we're all mental, and we're all physical. And let's be proud of it.
You want to say anything else? Okay.
Can I just point out, though, right, without getting into an argument with Jeff, as a dad, right, if my kid's got something, I'll take it off them. Because that's how I was brought up. And part of the problem we have is we don't know where them lines are. Be honest here, any of you, when you were kids, if you were doing something wrong, and your dad said, don't do that, and you said, no, I'm going to, how many of you think that your dad would have gone, well, actually, now that you've explained it from your point of view, I think you're right. It wouldn't happen, would it? I would still be in A&E. It wouldn't happen. Sometimes, you know, you don't have to be popular to be a parent, you don't have to be popular to be a friend, but you do have to be popular to be yourself. Just be yourself, you know, just be yourself. Anyway, that's it.
Definitely. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Do you want to clap that? Yeah, come on.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And we'd love to hear your stories afterwards, if you'd like to talk to us outside. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming along.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.